Hello, and evening all, as dear old Dixon of Dot Green used to say. And welcome back to The Library is Open. It's one of the only places that is right now. Hope you brought your library card, and we're enchanted to see you and bring you the gift of literature and discussion. If I had a trailer, it'd be that. But I ain't got a trailer, so it's this. Hello, welcome back to The Library's Open, as I say, in my normal accent. Coming to you not live, but simulated live from my brother's bedroom, actually. Because I am isolating still with family at the moment. So this is his bedroom. I think it's quite a nice backdrop, actually, doesn't it? It's quite interesting. So today I'm going to try, and I emphasise try, to talk about a book that I just finished the other day, which felt like when I started it was going to be a massive sort of uphill battle, and it sort of was, but it also sort of wasn't. I'll get into that in a minute. And there was a part of me that was a bit sort of almost scared to start it because, well, I'll show you why, because it's huge. It's a breeze block. Like, that's a lot. You probably saw me talk about this briefly. Well, I mean, only if you saw the video. I mentioned it in my isolation book haul. I want to say part 2, but it could be part 1. I'm sorry, I'm not a scientist, and thus have not kept records. I could go and watch and find out, but I'm filming this now, so yeah. Anyway, that's largely irrelevant. So, well, do you know what? I'll just introduce the book and then I'll get into my little discussions. So this is the book in question. It's Lucy Ellman's Ducks, Newburyport. There we go. Which was the 2019 Goldsmiths Prize winner. Which I've latterly discovered, like, I don't, or rather, before starting this channel, I didn't really keep up with book awards per se. Like, I sort of knew the main ones, like the Orange Prize and the Man Booker and stuff like that. But I wasn't aware sort of this sort of like whole cult and knowledge base around them. I don't mean cult in a bad way, by the way, but it is like a stream of knowledge about book prizes. So I sort of researched a lot about the Goldsmiths Prize, and it's fitting now that I've read it and now that I know what the Goldsmiths Prize is that it would win this, because the Goldsmiths Prize tends to be quite experimental, kind of non-traditional narrative storytelling and stuff like that, and that's very much where this is, well, where this sits, I should say. I thought this was Lucy Ellman's debut novel, but it's not. She's written quite a few. This is the only one of hers that I've read, though, and it's published by Gallybeggar Press, who are I believe, a small print who are funded through donation and it's like support from people. Like, there's like a list of names in the back, which is nice. And yeah, how to describe this? See how I'm sort of biding my time before I actually have to describe what it's about. Okay, I'll try. This is set in Ohio, and it is about a woman who is her job is, she was a teacher, but she's now a baker. She makes pies. She describes herself as a housewife, so I don't want that to come across as though I'm using that term in a derogatory way. She calls herself a housewife. And this is about her brain, I want to say, and her experience of living over an unspecified period of time. At first I thought it was just a day, but it's not just a day, it's significantly longer than that, although I suppose it could be, although a lot would happen in a day if that's the case. And it's sort of a stream of consciousness, a la, I guess, James Joyce kind of thing, although much more enjoyable. And there are hardly any full stops in the whole thing. It's just comma, 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 chameleon, you come and go. No, that's a lie. And interspersed with this is the story, which is actually written in quote-unquote normal prose, of a mountain lion and her cubs, and her mating with a male lion and then escaping with her cubs, and then what happens when her cubs get taken away from her and she's captured, or rather pursued by people who want to hunt her down. The Ohio housewife narrator speaks in the phrase constantly, which is the fact that, followed by something, the fact that, followed by something, and that goes on for 1,000 pages. So what I would describe this novel as is being like what it would be like to have a conversation with someone's unconscious, or rather, if you could have a verbal conversation with everything that somebody doesn't say. So these are the myriad of thoughts that run through her head that seem to have no connection to one another, although they actually do, from day to day. And if you keep up with those vegan guys and the vegan queens on Those Vegan Guys channel, got the jingle in twice there now, you will know that Miasma and Gemini discussed me reading this book and talked about what, sort of internal monologues look like, which is something we're both really interested in, by the way. Well, all three of us, I should say. Well, four. Paul, Stuart, Miasma and Gemini. Little quartet of thought there. And, how thoughts sort of spiral from one another and how you don't always even recognise what they necessarily are about or where they came from, but they just sort of start to preoccupy you, and then your mind goes somewhere else, and then somewhere else, and then somewhere else. To cut to what I thought about this, I absolutely loved it. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. I think it will become, if I think this is any justice, this will become a classic, a kind of era-defining classic of our current time. It deals heavily with the politics and the social issues of the day, alongside more sort of mundane issues, and it sort of probes both the small and the large in things that we worry about and things that we just the sort of detritus that like finds its way into our brains. It's very provocative without seeming provocative, in the same way that sometimes things are the most political by not being political at all, but it's heavily critical of, like I say, in that mild way, of predominantly American culture, but also Western culture as a rule in the 21st century. And it's like, reading it is like watching someone have a breakdown in slow motion, if that makes sense. So I'll read you some of the blurb from the back. Latticing one cherry pie after another, an Ohio housewife tries to bridge the gaps between reality and the torment of meaningless info that is the United States of America. She worries about her children, her dead parents, African elephants, the bedroom rituals of happy couples, weapons of mass destruction, and how to hatch an abandoned wood pigeon egg. Is there some trick to surviving school shootings, medical debts, Franks and beans? I assume that's like sausage and beans, isn't it? But vegans, so we don't do that. Although there is a really nice one you can get actually from one of the vegan supermarkets online. Just as a sidebar. So it says here, it's a scorching indictment of America's barbarity past and present, and a lament for the way we are sleepwalking into environmental disaster. See, this is what I mean. It's like, I'm really glad I read that blurb, because I couldn't encompass all of this and the things that it makes you think. So you're sort of in this weird inception space where you're feeling her thoughts and then her sort of brain narrative and how that's progressing is mixing with yours, and it's almost like it's spawning like its own spiral of thoughts. So it's like, where would that ever end? Because I kind of love that. Because imagine if you wrote down your thoughts on reading this, and then someone read that, and then they were absorbing the novel's thoughts, and then your thoughts about the novel, and then their thoughts about your thoughts about the novel. Where would it end? Madness, that's where. So welcome to my life. But just pause for a cup of tea there, because I spoke quite at length. So yeah, absolutely adored this. I actually miss her voice now, which sounds so weird. I read it at a sort of... I kind of wanted to read quite a lot of pages at once to kind of get into the groove and the feel of it, because it is an adjustment, because we're so used to reading both fiction and non-fiction that is very... not sanitized, but very sort of formulaic in some ways. And that's not necessarily a negative thing. It's just how, as a general rule, we've been taught to absorb stories and to recognise forms of storytelling, but this is not that. And so you kind of had to get into the groove. So I read about between, I want to say, 50 and 100 pages a day, because I thought to try and do it in small snatches is fine, but you sort of... I think once you've read a number of pages and really got into the groove of it, that's when you start to recognise the conventions of how it works, the unconventional conventions of how it works, and then you stop noticing the fact that there's no punctuation or full stops, which, sidebar, it's really hard to know where to put your bookmarks. You have to sort of remember particular lines and then just whack a bookmark in and hope for the best the next day. Well, that's what I did anyway, so that's your advice. Life advice. But yeah, and then, what was I going to say? Yes, you have to get into that groove of how it operates. And, you know, I mean, human beings are remarkably adaptable. I think we've seen that a lot. Well, some of them are. In the sense that we can adapt very quickly to new circumstances. And although I know it's not the same thing, it's almost a parallel with, like, having to stay inside so much now. It's like, although nobody likes it and we're, like, done with it and we'd love to go outside, obviously we can't. Right now, that's for the best, but we've adapted to that very quickly, and I think it's on a much smaller level. It's a bit like this: we can adapt to this form of storytelling. We just need clues and a little bit of hand holding, and then we can go, okay, I can proceed with this now and progress with it, as opposed to just sort of throwing it across the room, I guess, because it irritates us, because it's not what we're used to. And by the way, I wouldn't recommend throwing this across the room, because even in paperback, that's going to injure someone. Like, that's heft. Listen to that. Keep forgetting to do me sniffs on it. It's great. It does smell very slightly of soup, because I was eating soup when I finished it. Got a little bit on the cover. Oh well, little souvenir. There we go. That's how gross I am. Welcome. So yeah, I want to talk so much more about it, but I can't, because you kind of have to experience it. It won't be for everyone, this, by any stretch of the imagination. I've watched a couple of other YouTubers talk about this, and you know, it seems quite Marmite-y, like polarising. I love Marmite. Give me a yeast extract any day of the week, and I'm there for it. But like, some people, and that's fine, will hate this. It won't be their thing at all, but that's all right, because, you know, there's tons of really popular stuff that I don't like, which I need not go into now to lose my self-viewers. But I think it's almost, I hope this is not overstating it, it's almost a cultural milestone, I think, for literature in the 21st century, and definitely in this new decade, although it was technically written last decade, I guess, where the everyday rubs up against the politics and the sheer, as the back cover said, barbarity of being alive. There's one brilliant line, which I wish I could find the page for it. I should have made a note, that says, "No one is safe in America." And I thought that's so true of the whole world, actually, though, isn't it? This is sort of like weird illusion of safety that we have, in one form or another, that informs security, foreign policy, how we treat other people. But the core fact is that no one is safe, ever. Really, you can't be. That's not the world that exists. There's quite a pro, although the character isn't vegan, there's quite a pro vegan and climate changey stance to this where the main character really sort of thinks about and explores the idea of how we treat animals, what we do to them for our own ends, who's accountable for things, how that happened, and then that leads into, which I love because I love that there's this connection there, how that feeds into racism and homophobia and misogyny and so on and so forth, which is like they're all part of the same oppressive structure, so I quite like that about it. The fact that she's sort of having these thought experiments, which is sometimes what, when we're trying to talk to people who are not vegan, who don't get it, for instance, are the conversations that oftentimes they won't allow to happen. She doesn't shut those arguments down. She thinks them out to a sort of logical conclusion. And but yeah, so that's just part and parcel of it. And because of how big the novel is and the scope of it, it's Lucy Ellman, the author, who's done an amazing job with it. Just gone for broke, really, hasn't she? She's like, you know what, this is what I'm doing in the end. Really has time to explore those concepts fully and return to them again. That's a great thing. Like, this is so rewarding later on in the book. Like, the stuff that you just pick up that you thought, oh, I won't have absorbed that because there's so much information. But she comes back to it and you go, oh, that's a call back to that. Like, the name of her daughter's, one of her daughter's dolls is Coldy, which is a cute name. And then it'll just flare up in the middle of like a paragraph, like, well, not a paragraph, there are no paragraphs, about 600 pages later, and you still remember it. So it is possible to follow this dearth of information and take it in. It's just about, I think it's about how her thoughts on paper show how disjointed our worlds are because of all these things that are competing for our attention. But it's also about how we still have the power to retain all of that information if we put the effort in. Does that make sense? In the sense that, we can click a YouTube link, get bored of it after 30 seconds, click on Netflix, open a book, open a magazine, go for a walk. One walk a day, please. Don't take the mick. And it seems like our attention's constantly going everywhere and sort of fragmenting and not really focusing, but we do have the power to refocus that attention if we choose to take the opportunity. So I really quite enjoyed that part of it. Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what else to say other than I recommend, whether you love it or hate it, I think you should read it. And I normally say it's a complete taste thing, but I really think you should read it, everybody, because, as I say, I think it will become one of the defining books of our time, in the sense that it represents so clearly and so concisely, which seems a weird thing to say for a 1,000-page book, but maybe so totally then, what it is to be alive today and what it is to have so many thoughts that you can't express and know where to put them. So I recommend it. Yeah, I think, if you can get hold of it. I think it's actually quite cheap on ebook at the moment. I think I got this for like, I want to say £8. It is new because there weren't any used ones yet. Which is, for a breeze block, it's not bad, £8, is it? Unless you're building a wall, in which case that's going to mount up. But yeah, I think the ebook is fairly thingy. Although I don't know, there is something about having it here. But I guess maybe the experience of the ebook would almost be another one entirely because of how you have to read on an e-reader. See what I'm doing? I'm swiping my finger there. And that's something, isn't it, as well, about information, the information age, and so on and so forth. See, it all just feeds into itself. It's like I said before, it's Inception. This is Inception. I'm going to make a video about this video about this video. I'm not going to do that, but that's what you get. So yeah, read this, and then you'll figure out why it's called Ducks Newburyport, and this the rather intriguing little sigil on the side with the sort of carnival duck. Like Hooker Duck or whatever gun target thing. Anyway, yeah, read it. This is the first one on my channel. I'm going to say read it. Absolutely read it. And let me know what you think. I'll give you about 3 months, though, because like I said, it's well long. But, yeah, so that's Ducks Newburyport. I hope that's probably been all over the place, actually, as a review or thoughts. But I think that's to be expected because of the kind of novel that it is. I don't know how I would do a more straightforward approach to talking about it. And it's just going to have to be what it's going to be, because that's what I've got to say. Look at that, nearly done, and I've just finished my brew. How good is that? My merch mug again. Let's bring that back in. It's not merch, you can't buy them, it was a gift. But, you know, maybe one day the library will be open and working for me. That's all I can say. Anyway, so that's my thoughts for this episode. Do continue to give me your recommendations, your thoughts, your musings, your rants, your... well, let's keep it positive. If it's a rant, put a winky face on it. And let's keep chatting. I hope everyone's doing okay and staying home unless you have to go out and be a key worker, in which case thank you so much for everything you're doing. We do appreciate it. And for all those people that are staying at home, self-isolating and not congering down the street, thank you for all that you're doing. We appreciate it. In the meantime, look after yourselves and each other. It's a bit Jerry Springer, isn't it? I don't say that, do I? I just say stay safe and take care of each other, and I will see you again in the next episode of The Library is Open. Put that card away somewhere safe, make sure you disinfect it, and have it ready for next time we come back. Alright, much love, take care.